the new album Together Again, the first thing that struck me is, especially nowadays, a lot of musicians are writing about big international topics, as the world kind of goes sideways in its current state, and so it's quite understandable. And so it really kind of grabs you when an album like this comes out that really focuses on the minutia of life and the little aspects. But yet when you go through it again and again, you realize you guys are really addressing macro issues, but you're focusing on the small stories.
You
And first,
clever rascal.
all right.
Uh-oh. He's figured us out, Tom.
He's got our number.
All right.
Well, this is where it all starts. I mean, my theory of one of the reasons the world is the way it is today is that everything drives us to the top of the political pyramid, where we have no access and no influence. And it's designed just to keep us pissed off and powerless. Whereas, Tom and I, we could bring lots of creds to the table talking about big international stuff, but when it comes right down to it, this is the foundation that all of life is built on, and there are stories to be told that speak to the condition in which we're in these days. We were absolutely not unaware of the world at large, and but this is the group of songs that seem to tell the story we wanted to tell.
And is that the way your minds naturally work when it comes to songwriting, is focusing in on these individual characters and situations, even while you have the big life issues swirling around you? Or is that natural, or do you have to kind of force yourself to go, all right, let's find a way in here?
Well, what is the saying? Think globally, act locally. Isn't that right?
Yes.
I think that's kind of instinctively what we're doing. This we can control. This we understand. This we can move. We can't solve Ukraine, but we can write about it as in a personal way.
And that was one of the things that really impressed me, and I think drew me to Tom's writing. I mean, nobody wrote more about Vietnam than Tom. And he did it by telling individual stories, Born on the 4th of July, Wake Up, Jimmy Newman, and with humor, which almost nobody was employing that kind of important tool.
Country Joe.
Lyndon Johnson told the nation. I mean, come on. Once, humor is a great
I just said Country Joe wrote with humor.
Oh, yes, that's true. He did, but not as much as you did.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also people like Arlo Guthrie, with and things like that, and so yeah.
Oh yeah.
There's definitely a history of that, but you're right though, and it seems the wordplay of it all, the poking fun of it all, a lot of people, and nothing wrong with just going straight for the jugular, that's its own art form in itself. But it is funny, or it is odd that that I don't know, twist of phrase, the clever way of pulling the rug out from all of these bloated types at the top. You don't see that as much anymore, and that's another thing that does stand out in all of these songs.
And we have written, we wrote a song that we've recently retired about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and which didn't go on the last album. We wrote a song about, they're eating the puppies in Springfield, Ohio. The cats are medium rare. And that's the kind of stuff that, we would be unpatriotic.
Yes.
And it goes back to the emperor has no clothes.
Right.
Right. You poke fun of the powerful, and they're not powerful anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
And this emperor has no clothes, and my God, what a terrible sight it is.
You're right.
Well, and also, I think, there is the lowest hanging fruit of our collective lifetimes out there for songwriting. But my attitude is attention is this guy's oxygen.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give him any more attention than he seems to be able to get just fine for himself. And besides that, it's fun to do that. It's easy to do that. But let's talk about a 22-year-old kid flying a B-17 in the last stages of World War II, because we've not heard that story enough or at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I mean, for me, the song that first hooked me was Artie's Last Stand, in part because I used to write for newspapers back when they existed, and so coincidentally enough, we had a friend staying with us for Thanksgiving, and she and my wife met while they were both working at a daily newspaper, and they were reminiscing about those days and the print and the ink and making the deadline and all that kind of thing. And but the irony of it all is you're talking about this the art of the newspaper and the way that that's delivered, and yet you guys wrote these songs using Zoom, using a video conferencing service.
Yes.
So it's obviously you're not Luddites in any respect. But I'm curious, from this perspective, as people that obviously appreciate what came before, but have learned to use what's come since, what's the key to finding a good balance, especially in the world of art, music, etc.?
Good question. I think we have to learn to use the tools that are there to be used, that make it easier for us. This would be impossible for us if we didn't have Zoom. And by the way, I may not be a Luddite, but I am a klutz. It's kind of minor miracle that I'm actually here talking to you. As John can attest, I mean, I'm terrible at getting online, but once I'm there, I think I'm very grateful for it, because we're able to sit across the table from each other, so to speak, and do our work. So you use the tools that are available, but you don't surrender your soul to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always described these sessions that we do is that we discovered Zoom could be used for good as well as for evil. That, we first started doing it just because it was the pandemic. We were lonely, we were isolated, and you wanted to talk to your friends somehow. You wanted to see them, and we both about the same time discovered that, actually, this might be a good medium for co-writing, because in the old analog days we would have to be in the same room.
Yeah.
And as it is, I was telling somebody just the other day, this is the most creative period of my life.
Absolutely.
I'm writing with 5 or 6 people every week. I'm writing with someone from Bloomington, Indiana, our friend Carrie, Tom.
Yep.
As soon as I'm done here, and we can also look at how it impacts your work.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are. You can talk to both of us.
even from the start of COVID, I'm sure I've written something like 700 songs with people like Tim O'Brien and Kathy Fink and others. I mean, it's a miracle that to have this kind of breadth of co-writing. And we're all different, and we write songs together that we never would have written on our own.
And we've learned, one of the things you learn in co-writing is how to be generous and how to be humble, how not to be possessive about an idea. You know, we were writing the other day, and it's like, well, what if this happened? Oh, well, it's not what I thought about, but sure, why not? You know, we can write my song next week. You know, you're a well, you're not a glass. And thinking back historically, you know, Pete Seeger, who probably was a Luddite. I mean, here was a guy in his 90s chopping wood.
Right. Yeah.
On stage. You know, he realized early on that the boob tube, as it was pejoratively called, was a great way to reach people. And he employed that. And, you know, he got shit from some people who said, why are you using this? He said, because I can reach more people. All these people can't come to one of my concerts. Plus, I can introduce Maybelle Carter and Roscoe Holcomb and June Carter Cash and the New Lost City Ramblers to people who would never know about them. So, you know, the battle between technology and in-person stuff continues and will. Yeah.
Although what comes out for me from everything you're saying is that the difference really is you guys are constantly finding ways like, how can we use this to keep creating? And for you guys, it's about creating, not consuming necessarily. Not just being passive recipients of whatever an algorithm is pushing out at you, but it's like, all right, how can we make this a tool that we use?
You know, I was reading an article with an Amish elder about an Amish elder, and he said, it is not that we reject technology, but whatever comes into our community, we have a discussion. Does this help build our community? And if it doesn't, we say we don't need it because our primary goal is to build our community. So we don't reject electricity just because it's electricity or modern. It's what happens when that comes in. We all sit around with our devices at the supper table instead of talking to one another. And that's, you know, I am not active on social media at all. I don't, you know, you weigh the good and the bad. And so I pulled out a while ago, and it just doesn't interest me. I don't have the bandwidth for it. I'd rather be writing with Tom than checking my Facebook page.
Yeah.
You know what happens when I press the Facebook image or icon on my, I go somewhere when it has nothing to do with me. I mean, I don't know where I am.
Yeah,
I'm there somewhere, but I'm not where I push a button that says Facebook.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't bother pushing it.
Right.
Nope.
That's Facebook calling to yell at you.
Yeah. Well, it's Mark Zuckerberg on the phone.
Right.
Because he's watching this right now.
Right. Actually, he's probably on Facebook the least. Okay, let's see. He may have to redial back in. Sometimes if you're doing this on a phone and you get a call, it'll bump you.
I'm sure he's doing it on his iPad, but hopefully.
Okay.
We don't want to talk about. Should we talk about Tom and his absence?
All right.
Well, you know, And actually, that wouldn't be a bad subject. You know, Tom, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, retired from the road after 6.5 decades of punching the clock and doing good work and being really everywhere, from little clubs in mid-America to the Isle of Wight Festival with Bob Dylan and 3 of the 4 Beatles. So this is his main creative outlet right now. And I know someday it'll happen to me, where I'll just say, I can't, or I don't want to go out there and ride on another Delta jet.
Yeah. And
yeah. So to me, I mean, Tom's got 15 years head start on me. And he's really a model for how to have a creative life, your whole life. I mean, there's, we've joked every now and again because we're sports fans, which is so unwoke. I mean, we were commenting, God, there's none of our pals in this business that we can talk sports with. And so we wrote this song called I'm Woke Until the Weekend. And we'll get done writing a song and we'll say, aren't you glad we aren't football players? Or weren't football players, because we would have been retired for 30, 40, maybe 50 years.
Yeah. And yet, I mean, you guys are outliers in that, you're in a profession that's not known for having, longevity for the bulk of the people who try to make a living in it. What would you say is the key to, the two of you, both together and individually, enduring throughout the years?
Well, Tom less than I. We didn't rely on hits to make our way in. I was a dozen years into my professional life before I had a song that everybody went, ooh. And we in this line of work, you build your career from the bottom up. You have relationships with not relationships. Well, kind of a relationship with your audience.
Yeah.
You're in the folk music world, which I'm proud to say I'm a part of. A lot of people run away from that term. Yet I read that Todd Snyder was a folk singer, though he never played any of the same venues I did. You walk in and you immediately have audiences who are listening to you.
Yeah.
You're not battling a jukebox or a pool table. You're not in a bar. People come to see you to hear you, and it makes you pay attention to what you do. I think it makes you a better writer if you know that people are actually going to listen to these words. And when you have, and in this post-pandemic world, when you have 2 veteran songwriters, we can always say to one another, oh, that's a lazy line. We can do better than that. And it makes us both better. I mean, Tom is a great understander of form and great hooks. I'm a story guy. To me, the first thing I always ask is, what's the story and who's the voice? And so we've written more songs like that together than we write individually.
So one thing, you were talking about coming up with, better lines, better lyrics, and, pushing each other to come up with. I don't know exactly who wrote this one, but in listening to The Future, I love that there's this description, this lyric, the finest bunch of reprobates I had ever met, which
that was Tom.
Okay. Which, again, that's the kind of thing you don't typically hear in a song. And yet it's one of those great lines where in just the fewest amount of words, it says so much about the people being referred to, and the the camaraderie and such. And I'm wondering, like, lines like that, how often do they pop in, and how often do you have to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite?
We actually do surprisingly little rewriting.
Hmm.
We both teach songwriting workshops, and one of the things we both say is, do not, in your first draft, don't edit. Just go, because you don't really know where the song is going to go. I mean, one of the reasons that Tom and I write well together is we're really practiced in surrendering to the process. It sounds kind of woo-woo.
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of us are woo-woo, but we just know that once you breathe life into a story and into characters, and the characters are not little avatars of you, and everything that comes out of their mouth is not you speaking. Once you get a disobedient character in your song, you realize, oh, cool, I'm really there. And then you don't, I did an album a number of years ago called Mightier Than the Sword, and I wrote with some of my favorite authors and poets. And one of them was Barbara Kingsolver. And she said, oh, wow, I usually have 10,000 words to get my ideas across, and you want me to do this in 3.5 minutes. And I said, well, tell me, do you work with a storyboard? I mean, do you know at the beginning where you're going to end up? And she said, well, sometimes I have a vague idea, but it's a moving target, because as the story progresses, it would be boring just to, as Billy Collins so wonderfully said, your pen can either be a dictation device or it can be a flashlight. And that's really where Tom and I are in our individual writing. And when we realize that in one another, it's like, well, yeah, this is kind of what we thought we were starting off with, but we don't know that that's exactly the path we're going to end up on. And that's what makes, more than any other writer I write with. I mean, Tom and I finish one another's sentences. I mean, we've been friends for over 40 years, and we've toured together, and but this kind of work, he really said it succinctly the other day. This is really a partnership more than co-writing. It's, we have this mission that we're on, and we write similarly. And so we're back to your original question, where does a line like The Finest Bunch of Reprobates? Tom was a part of the whole Greenwich Village folk music scene. Like I said, he had 15 years on me. I grew up in northern Wisconsin. I was a long way from McDougal Street. And the way that worked is you would be part, it was like an endless open mic. You'd go and you do your 15 or 20 minutes, and then you'd go to the Kettle of Fish where everybody was hanging out and have a drink and talk and visit. And then you'd go on to Gertie's Folk City, and then maybe you'd go to the bitter end. And then, and it was tremendous camaraderie. In a small geographic area, most of them lived there. They lived together. I mean, Noel Stuckey, the Paul of Peter, Paul, and Mary, was Tom's roommate. Tom told me a story about being in an apartment near something, and there's the young Bob Dylan on a typewriter writing something, and he pulls it out, shows it to Tom, and says, what do you think I should do with this? And Tom said, well, you could sell it to a poetry magazine for $25 and a half dozen people would read it, or you could put a melody to it. And that's how A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall came into being. It was that kind of, when Dave Van Ronk died, he was Tom's best friend. And the stories where you learned about everything about everybody. You learned how wonderful they were and how rotten they were. and what their faults were and what their great gifts were. So that song started off with me remembering seeing some of these youngsters at the time, Molly Tuttle, or I remember Alison Krauss as a 14-year-old at this festival, and just walking up to a jam session and go, oh, there's the future. You would recognize it every now and again. Nickel Creek. I mean, I remember inviting them up to play with me on the main stage, and they said, "Really?" And I thought, "Oh, you don't even know." It's just so cute. You do not. Right. And so that song, for instance, the first verse is about seeing something that you recognize as the future. The second verse is about, oh, I remember being that age in that place. The third verse is, oh, here I am, an oldster. Yeah. An elder. And a lot of my friends that I met back then, who were my comrades, who were my family. That's the thing about musicians is, we're moving targets. We make friends in ways that don't seem logical to ordinary human beings. You meet somebody, you share a bill, you follow them at a festival site, you're having a beer in the performers area, and in a ridiculously short amount of time, they become part of your world. And so that's where that verse came from. And then, of course, the bridge is, here we are. We've walked on the shoulders of giants. And now we're reaching out to the future, to people we had no idea. Yeah. We were going to pass this baton on to. Yeah. So it was, a lot of these songs are two elders looking back on the world, whether it be Artie's Last Stand or Last Man Sitting, one of my favorite songs on the album, or I Ran Away with the Circus, which, I took my grandkids to a really like C-class mall parking lot circus where there were actually like 12 people who actually worked for the circus. And here's, from Poland on the trapeze. And then the next time you see them, they're selling popcorn in the stands. And then they're from, darkest Africa, swallowing swords. And in the middle of all that, Tom says, well, how does this person leave the circus? And it was like, oh, we haven't attached a timeline to this. So maybe it's December 1941. And then he comes back to the circus, Italy, and we didn't know that's where that was going to go. It's one of the most, Tom and I really have fun writing. I mean, it is playing music after all. And I don't have fun with everybody that I co-write with. Yeah. Even if I write really great songs, because it's not their style. Yeah. But this all began with a pretty simple question.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I love about all this. It's just the ways that it can, a good conversation, like a good song, can go off on different tangents and, have little elements and stuff like that. But, and the other thing, getting back to the lead track, The Future, was, it struck me, it's a very optimistic tune in regards to the future of music. And there's not a lot of optimism out there regarding the future of music, be it, the ways that it's being attacked by the technology companies, and it's harder for musicians to make a living and things like that. And, just the stereotypical, oh, in my day we had this, and now, and so it was really kind of nice to have that element in there. And, I'm wondering what makes you optimistic about the future of music, given everything it's facing currently?
Well, let me answer a little bit for Tom, because I know he feels this way as well. If you look back at the big, when folk music had its 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the music business is the absolute epitome of capitalism. It's a hungry beast. It eats you up and spits you out and then goes on to the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Whether it's disco or hip hop or, hair bands or whatever. Back then, you could count on one hand, because that's when I came into it as a listener. You could count on one hand the writers who were writing the songs. You could count on one hand people who were considered really top-notch instrumentalists. You could count on one hand the people who were considered really good vocalists, and they were usually women. And yet it was on the cover of Time magazine. It had a television show, for God's sake. It was enormous.
Yeah.
And I entered it in kind of the backwater, at which I consider myself really lucky. There was no gold ring. I wasn't, when I came in, nobody was getting recording contracts. Nobody was filling Carnegie Hall. No one was making a lot of money. No one was on the hit parade.
Yeah.
So fast forward 50 years then, or 60, there are so many good writers. There are so many incredible instrumentalists, so many wonderful singers. I mean, folk music is healthier now than it's ever been. And there are more people who are, in the spirit of folk music, singing songs and playing instruments in their own homes or in their little social groups. And they're going to folk dances and they're going to festivals. And it's not on the cover of Time magazine, but it's richer and healthier than it's ever been. And it has nothing to do with Spotify.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with, Ticketmaster. It all has. So that's the part of the music that Tom and I see. And really enthused about that. And yeah, you still have Chris Thiele's and, I'm With Her, and Alison Krauss is like a grande dame now.
Oh, yeah.
And Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle and Old Crow Medicine Show and all these people who are building on the foundations of traditional music, and they're running with it. I mean, I just produced an album commemorating a fiddle contest in Mountain City, Tennessee that happened 100 years ago.
Oh.
And I got all those people to play on that album saying, this is not a historical recreation. This is to show what's happened in the last century. And that thing, for instance, was sponsored by the Klan, for God's sake.
Oh, my God.
And today, look at this incredibly rich and diverse scene that was still built upon all the faults and the wonders of that music. And it's 100 years later, and there couldn't be anything further from that than what we have now.
Yeah.
So it's I just look around and think, okay, how did this happen? I'm still that 20-year-old kid. I'm still always the youngest guy in the room. Not anymore. I'm still always, the newcomer. Not anymore. You turn around and it happens, and you say, oh, you go to a festival and you don't know 2/3 of the people on the bill. And it used to be you'd go to the festival and you knew 2/3 of the people on the bill, and it was your convention. Because that's what festivals are for musicians. It's our convention. It's where we see the only other people who don't think we're crazy for the job we're doing in the world.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, cool. I'm going to hear all kinds of music. That's going to be new to me. And you can treat it enthusiastically. I mean, both Tom and I were mentored by Pete Seeger. I mean, he sought us out. He sang our songs. He watched us when we were, little punks. And he knew his job as an elder was to, give us advice and sort of point us in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the finest reprobates I've ever met.
And, and you guys even have the song Pathfinder dedicated to Pete.
Yeah.
He is one of those guys, though, that I don't know if I can come up with an explanation. I'm wondering if you can. He's one of those guys that's considered a North Star.
Mm-hmm. Good way to put it.
For generation after generation after generation. And not that there haven't been talented people that have come since Pete Seeger, but for some reason, he's still that North Star. And what is it about him that is, always that guiding light, no matter how much time passes?
Well, as the song says, Pete was in the wrong line of work. He was a really shy guy. But he understood what music could do. That it was more than just cotton candy for the ears. I mean, I came of age during the civil rights movement, and it was like, oh, music can be something that you can adapt from older forms. I mean, the power of that music was they simply changed the singular pronoun to the plural.
Mm-hmm.
And you had "we shall overcome" and "we will not be moved." And it was participatory, and Pete got that. That change happens when you change people's hearts, not just when you change their minds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm kind of frozen. There you go.
There you go.
And he got people singing. I mean, it was unheard of. I mean, I remember hearing my first Pete Seeger album, and I'd never been to a concert. It was a live concert recording in Carnegie Hall, and I thought, oh, well, this is what you do with a big group of people.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of his concerts, people would be clapping, and they'd be clapping for themselves as much as anything else, because wow, we were this incredible choir. I've never been in anything like this.
Yeah.
And it was all, when you think of the people who are the great heroes and icons of our culture, it's not just because they were great musicians or great writers or great singers. It's because they were brave. I mean, look at Martin Luther King, look at Jackie Robinson, look at Rosa Parks. And Monday was the 70th anniversary of when she sat down and then refused to give up that seat.
Mm-hmm.
These were people who were admired because they had guts, and they were in it for more than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete was always about something bigger than himself. And that is the kind of thing that when people think about him, certainly when I think about him, and I knew him very, very well,
mm-hmm.
He had guts,
Mm-hmm.
and you had to admire that. And you said, that's what I want to do. Not only that I want to be a performer, because for people like Tom and me, he was a solo performer.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan was a solo performer, but he was an odd performer, still is.
Right. Well, he's writing for and simultaneously trying to push away his audience at the same time.
He was, some of the best concerts and some of the worst concerts I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Dylan concerts.
Right. And yet, the other thing that strikes me in all of this is, because as you were pointing out, none of you guys fit a formula for success, especially as it would come from a business mind, a marketing mind, a record label mind, and there are still so many bands and artists like you guys that continue to defy that. Among the ones that you were mentioning earlier, another one I'd put in that category, even though they're classified more as bluegrass, is Steep Canyon Rangers. And I've interviewed them a couple of times, and they've had, been having phenomenal success. But it's like, the whole idea of like, you can't go into that music thinking, all right, this is my ticket to, I'll eventually be performing at the Hollywood Bowl,
Yeah.
and so how much of that is always just a leap of faith, or I don't know, just the audacity to be yourself, or what is it?
Tom used to fill up Royal Albert Hall by himself. And when he stopped performing about a little over a year ago, he was probably playing to 300 people. And he found great joy in that. And it was just, and as I mentioned, for me, there was never a golden ring. My only reward is that I got to play music that I loved and that I was proud of. And I was in a community of people who was very generous and collegial and welcoming. I mean, Pete Seeger, Tom Paxton, Arlo Guthrie treated me like an equal from day one. There was never this sort of stratification of, well, young grasshopper, wait till you get some miles on you. So there was that. And, I think there's the resignation that that's not, maybe I thought that's what was going to happen to me. But I know now it ain't going to happen to me. So how do I deal with that?
Yeah.
Because I know I have friends who thought there was a gold ring. And yeah, you pluck a Tracy Chapman, you pluck a Mary Chapin Carpenter, you pluck a Suzanne Vega, out and they're famous for 10 minutes and then they kind of go back into the fold.
Yeah.
And it sort of gives you hope that, well, gosh, maybe I'll be that one plucked out. But I've been really fortunate. Tom's been really fortunate. Lots of people have been very fortunate. You make a decent living. And as my friend Utah Phillips used to say, you can make a living without making a killing. And you get to hang with the finest bunch of reprobates you've ever met. And you have laughs and you have friendships and, there's lots of metrics for success.
Yes.
I remember when the country band Sugarland, who were neighbors of mine, were launching their first arena tours, and they had a couple nights at the Fox Theater, and Christian Bush, the guy, sent me tickets, and we're like in the 5th row center stage. And my wife, who is a writer, she writes children's books, she was not familiar with the music world at all. And she's watching them and she says, yeah, they're really good, but how does that happen? How does that happen? And I said, well, imagine you're in a train station and you're waiting for the train. You have to have all your baggage there. You have to have your management. You have to have your publicist. You have to have your record company. You have to have your crew. You have to have all this stuff ready to get on the train because the train is going to leave at this time. And if you're not on it, too bad. And she said, oh, she said, what happened to you? And I said, I didn't have any of that. The train left the station. And it was like, oh, okay. I'll take the bus. I'll take the bus. Yeah, I mean, it's everybody in the music business that you will talk to will say, I don't know how this happened.
Right.
I was so lucky. And, there's talent involved. There's resilience. This is what occurred to me during the pandemic. That when all of a sudden you saw people learning how to do online concerts.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us had ever done that, ever thought about doing that. But you don't survive in this kind of work without being flexible, resilient, and creative. Because you're going to get kicked down more than not. And
Mm-hmm.
well, that record didn't work. But luckily, I don't have a record company
Yeah.
saying, fuck you.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you didn't listen to us. Do it like this. You get the joy of doing good work, having great comrades, playing music you're proud of. And to me, I have friends,
Yeah.
I remember I knew the Dave Matthews Band when I lived in Charlottesville, way before they were the Dave Matthews Band, way before. And, I remember running them to them all at a party. And I just thought, I wouldn't trade one day of your life. You can have that.
The other thing it made me think of, that I've heard over and over again from interviewing musicians is success is what breaks up bands more than anything else.
Oh, God. Look at the Eagles.
Yes.
Look at Simon and Garfunkel.
Yes.
Look at the Beatles, for heaven's sakes,
Right. Yeah. It just, when you crest over that initial peak and maybe there's a little bit of a dip, people are not built or prepared to psychologically handle that. And
you think it's going to last forever. You think this is what my life is going to be like. And
right.
I used to be able to dunk a basketball.
Oh, I never got that good. All right.
And guys at the gym invite me into the games now. It's like, nah.
Yeah.
My knee looked up at me one day and said, I hope you enjoyed that rebound because and there'll be times, I see videos of myself every now and again. I thought, God, I can't play like that anymore. But I've never heard a song and say, I can't write like that anymore. I feel I'm writing better than I've ever written. And part of it is just the practice of doing it so much and learning what you can learn from your friends about how they write. I've learned so much doing these co-writing and it's expansive and at a time when, as you say, a lot of musicians have just sort of, I've done that. They're retiring. They're not writing anymore. Writer's block. Wow. I can't imagine that. I know it exists, but it's, call up one of your friends and write with them. That'll jerk you out of it.
Yeah. But that also brings up, my other pet peeve about the way things run in that there's so many artists that are, I think, doing their best work now, but it's not getting the attention because it's not part of their quote hit phase. And yet, it's like, but yeah, I'm like telling him like, oh, this band released this album. It's fantastic. It won't get the attention it deserves, but holy crap, are they firing on all cylinders?
Well, and it's because, the streaming services are like social media. They're run by algorithms.
Yeah. And
so, we lament the album format because every single person of an age bought an LP or a CD and discovered a song that became their favorite song. And it never got any airplay. It was a B-side at best. And you just think, wow, I never would have discovered that without this form. Plus, that's where I'm a Luddite. I still consider the album format a storytelling device. So that it ends up it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And so, people, a Sgt. Pepper's would never happen today.
No.
A Pet Sounds would never happen today. Her Satanic Majesty. What was the
Or Satanic Majesty's Request by the
Yeah.
Stones.
Yeah, it was the Stones' attempt to do a Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah.
I remember when the day Sgt. Pepper's came out, and my buddy Michael, we were in high school, and he turned to me after listening to it once, and he said, "There are master tapes hitting the dumpsters by the hundred today." Everything's different now.
Right. Yeah, no, it's like there was a photography book released a few decades ago by Linda McCartney.
Oh yeah.
And it included a lot of her work pre-marriage when she was doing these assignments and stuff. And she happened to be photographing traffic as they were working on, I think, what would become Dear Mr. Fantasy. But while they were doing that, Sgt. Pepper's came out, and they all listened, and they're like, "Ah, damn it, they did it again." You know?
Yeah, really. I mean, it was extraordinary in what, 10 years time?
Mm-hmm.
That was about the recording life of the Beatles, wasn't it?
It may have been close to 8. I mean, they were releasing like 2 albums a year for a while.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. And I release 1 album a year, and everybody says, "How can you be so prolific?" And you just,
Yeah. And then, finally, just to end on a lighter note. So the song, as you said in the liner notes, that I can't believe no one has written yet, "Cheating While I'm Eating," which I thought was fabulous. And it reminded me, talking about people who are carrying that torch, it reminded me a lot of Brad Paisley's songs, and, his great turns of phrase and stuff like that. And I can't believe no one wrote that yet, because it's like, oh my, especially now being a middle-aged married man, it's like, oh yeah, that sums up a lot. And so of course I'm wondering what is your drug of choice in that particular area?
Well, I have witnessed so many kids of my friends. One couple in particular, that she was a total vegan. And he would go out with her dad and say, "Can we get a burger or something?"
You're right.
And you just knew this was happening.
Yeah.
Out there. And every now and again, Tom and I will say, let's write a cowboy song. And we did several of those on our first album together.
Mm-hmm.
And I, at one point, said, let's write a cheating song. He says, I don't want to write a cheating song. I said, I don't mean, picking up a girl in a bar. I mean, how about food?
Mm-hmm.
And that's as much as it started. But, we're paying homage to, the spoken verse sort of 3/4 of the way through.
Yeah.
In the same way that we made it during every Monday at 2, we had our homage to George Jones by using "Dear."
Yes. Yeah. Loved that.
Which I've always wanted to do, and that would seem like a perfect place to do it. But yeah, well, I'm glad you like the song. And like we said, I can't believe no one has ever written. I wrote a song with my buddy Tom Chapin, golly, almost 25, 30 years ago. That was "The Older I Get, the Better I Was." I remember when I wrote that, it's before any other song that said that came out.
Yeah.
I turned to Tom and said, there are songwriters in Nashville that when they hear this are going to go, damn.
Right.
Every now and again, you hear a good line, you go, damn, that was just waiting out. It's sort of like I often tell my songwriting students, God went around for years whispering into people's ears, dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 until finally a deaf man heard him.
No, that's interesting. Yeah.
That there's stuff that's out there waiting, both Tom and I, my song "Christmas in the Trenches," there's some songs you write, others you just write down. you believe that there is something out there that's just been waiting to happen, and you show up at the train station at the right time.
Yeah.
And there it is. And it could have easily gone to somebody else, but hey, you got lucky.
Right.
You paid
Right.
you paid attention.
Yeah. Now I did last year I interviewed Matt Scannell, who's the main guy from this band Vertical Horizon, and he talked about this one song that he had written. He said it's a better song than I Am a Writer.
Right.
You know, and he's like, it got to the point where I went and was checking other bands' lyrics to make sure I hadn't stolen stuff, because I'm like, there's no way I came up with this. I've got to be stealing, you know. But like,
that was McCartney's story with the melody for Yesterday.
oh, okay.
He played it for dozens of people. Said, "Have you heard this before?" He said, "No, great melody." That there are many times when Tom and I wrote "Stop at Nothing." There were some lines in there, you know, nothing ever happens, so something always does.
Yeah.
Or, we will stop at nothing to protect and save our kids, and stopping at nothing is exactly what we did.
Yeah.
We would write lines like that, and one of us would say, we're not that good. We're not that good to have grabbed onto that. So, this was a gift, and, praise the gifter.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think you have, I agree with this, what this fellow said to you, that you just say, maybe I'm better. The more I do this, the less I'm certain I know how it works. And again, that borders on woo-woo, but
yeah.
Because Tom and I both are students of Woody Guthrie, for instance. Here was a guy, utilitarian songwriter. He wrote 3,500 songs in less than 20 years. Shut up about being prolific.
Yeah.
It's every now and again you there's a signpost that you pass and you go, oh, maybe that's the way I'm supposed to go. I should pay attention, maybe. And that's all your job. That's certainly what I learned from Woody Guthrie, because I got a guitar when I was 14, had no money for lessons. I went to the library, and the only book under guitar under the Dewey Decimal System was Woody Guthrie folk songs. And I didn't know who he was. But there was a page of chord grids. I could play the chords, and here's a whole bunch of songs. And by the time I got through that book, I thought, wow, he wrote kid songs and love songs and historical songs and topical songs and songs about being in the Merchant Marines and in World War II and Jewish songs. And it's like, wow, I guess your job as a writer that's your primary job, is to pay attention. And that's what Tom and I attempt to do every Monday at 2.
Yes. Speaking of another tune. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, that covers all my material. Is there anything we didn't hit on that you want to discuss?
No, I think it's nice to talk with somebody who gets the album. You don't know. You write these things and you send them out on their little coltish legs out into the world and hope they do good work individually and collectively. And our attitude is, you don't fill in all the blanks. You want your listener to invest in the song. Yeah. You want them to know what you're talking about in such a way that you don't have to spell everything. It's the wonderful distillation of language that songwriting and poetry, for instance, share. Saying more with less, and making it a partnership between the writer and the listener. And it's trickier, but it's what's fun right now.
Right. And, I think you also have to, it must be hard to, you have to give up that control.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I referenced before, once you have a disobedient character,
Yeah.
in your song. You've given up control and you say, okay, well, this could probably go in a much more interesting direction than I expected. And
Yeah.
often it does. Sometimes it doesn't. It does. Hell, if you strike out 7 times out of 10 in a baseball career, you're a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So you get used to the fact that everything isn't going to be a winner. But my God, what could you have done in the last hour that would have been more fun and better? You're creating something, for God's sake. It's the closest thing that Tom and I can come to giving birth.
Right.
And how great is that?
Yeah. But it also reminds me that you have to learn to let go, in the sense of when I was in college, I had a writing class with the author T.C. Boyle, and his thing is you would a certain number of people had to write a short story and bring it into the class, and then you'd give it around to everyone, and then they'd read it and come back next week and critique it. And the deal was, when they're talking about your story, you weren't allowed to ever speak. You just had to listen, because he's like, if you get into this and it gets published out in the world, you can't go around to every reader and go, all right, here's what I meant. And it's like, you have to learn to let go and just like, okay, this is how people are going to interpret this.
Well, and you can hit on even a line that will change people's attitude about what this song is about. Even today, you hear a song that you thought was so great when you were a kid or a teenager in high school, for instance.
Yeah.
And you hear it now and you still get all warm and fuzzy, but you listen to the lyrics and you go, oh, what crap was that? But it was your first slow dance.
Yeah.
And you cannot control, you don't want to control everybody's experience with the song, because it's much more interesting I've had people come up to me. I've had a lot of clergy come up to me and say, I used your song at a funeral the other day and it was perfect. Or I used your song in my Christmas sermon. Or I used your song in a baptism.
Wow.
And it spoke to that. And it was never written for that purpose at all, but people process the world through their own peculiar lenses.
Yeah.
And it speaks to them in a way that you don't expect. I just wrote a eulogy for a friend of mine who was a songwriter who passed away. And he wrote a song that I probably sung every concert for 40 years. And people love this song. And I said, there's some songs that you write and somebody takes it home and they sing it over the kitchen sink and they sing it over the cradle and they sing it over the grave, and it becomes their song. It's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
You've turned it loose. You have no control how people are going to relate to that song. And that's so great. The biggest thing that happened to me during the pandemic, I was in Australia when it all started. I'd been touring there and I came home on the 16th of March in 2020. And quarantined myself up at a little cabin that my wife and I bought to go to write. And so there wasn't anything in my normal life I could do. Couldn't go to the store, couldn't go to church, couldn't go to the gym, couldn't go visit friends. And I certainly couldn't go into the studio as I had planned to do. And I would wake up each morning and I have a little regimen of meditation and prayer. And I read Thomas Merton and Rilke, and I have 3 different poetry things that come into, and here I was. I didn't read any news or anything. It was all completely right brain activity. And then I would start to write. And it was like the logical, critical part of my brain was completely turned off. And I started writing like I'd never written.
Wow.
In ways that I'd ever written. And when I sort of did a debrief on it, I thought, oh, well, maybe this whole ritual in the morning preps me for the necessary part of surrender into the story that I don't know what the story is. I'm
Mm-hmm.
discovering it as I go along, and that's one of the things that really helped me learn this whole process of just letting go, and it changed my writing, and it just stuff just came pouring out.
Wow. Okay.
So I just wanted to I just want to throw that very specific practice in there so that anybody who out there who's a song, even an experienced songwriter, a fledgling songwriter, doesn't matter, you know, clearing the deck like that, you know, allowed me to write in ways that weren't so self-editing and self-critical. And no, I can't write about that, or I don't. How does that work?
Yeah.
I didn't have to have answers to those questions. So if that helps anybody out there listening to this, you're gonna have my blessing. We need as many good songwriters in this world. You know, we need more poets in this particularly unpoetic time.
Yes. I would agree. Not everyone will get the meaning or the subtext or whatnot immediately, but maybe it'll hit a little bit down the line, or you know. Yeah.
Change is painfully slow.
Yeah. Well, especially the changes you want, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like bad changes and disasters happen really quickly, but
well, and you don't trust the things that happen really quickly. You know, if you're a student of history, as both Tom and I are, you see, oh, you know, incredible income inequity. We've been here before.
Yeah.
You know, Teddy Roosevelt had, you know, busted the trusts and was the first person, a Republican, to ever propose national health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, then his relative, you know, it happened again, and the next Roosevelt had to deal with it. And here we are again. So how are we going to deal with it? You know?
Yeah. Well, the old line, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme.
That's good. I hadn't heard that one.